the airport and other access points, the PDRF Clark Emergency Operations Center ensures that its operations will continue even in a worst-case scenario. At the core of the PDRF Operations Center is the Disaster Information Management System, which uses advanced communication software and technology to help businesses and communities be more prepared for disasters. Harnessing data from local and international sources, PDRF monitors earthquakes, tropical cyclones, volcanic eruptions, and pandemics. On a global and regional scale, PDRF utilizes data from the Pacific Disaster Center's Emergency Operations website, which collates information feeds from reliable agencies around the world. On a local scale, PDRF employs a customized ArcGIS online platform from ESRI called Handa, or Hazard and Disaster Analysis for Business Resilience. Through this, PDRF has been able to plot critical infrastructure, track storm paths, and identify areas that are more prone to hazards. When it comes to disaster response, Handa helps zero in on facilities such as evacuation centers and hospitals. Aside from this, PDRF has customized the Handa platform for incident reporting and monitoring, which give member companies an overview of the hazard's impact on their facilities. Today, PDRF continues to pave the way both here and abroad. Through its growing partnerships with member companies and other stakeholders, PDRF becomes one step closer to building a stronger, resilient Philippines.
A better future is built by the brave, envisioned by brilliant minds, born from the passions of thousands strong. One that isn't without risk, but protected from it. Safe from all the worries and secure for what's to come. Because a better future with the greatest empires, the strongest communities, and the happiest families will always be worth having. That's why the bold and the fearless understand that recreating something better takes courage and strength. So together, let's start shaping a better future today. Recreate a braver tomorrow.
Good afternoon, mayors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our seventh Livable Cities Lab, brought to you in partnership with the League of Cities, Globe Telecom, Assure, and PDRF. I'm Guillermo Luz, Chairman of the Livable Cities Challenge, Chief Resilience Officer of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, and an Associate Director at Ayala Corporation. In the face of a climate defined future, Philippine cities and towns are at high risk from stresses and shocks that stronger, more frequent, and more destructive typhoons bring about. Natural hazards not only kill, injure, and affect thousands of Filipinos every year, they also destroy homes, livelihoods, and businesses, displace people, and disrupt economic activities. If these stresses and shocks are to be reduced or minimized, our towns and cities need to reverse the current reactive approach to disasters of merely repairing or rebuilding what has been damaged to strengthening and improving resilience for future and against future disasters. We've assembled a great panel of technical experts to share knowledge, experience, and insights between LGUs and professionals from the fields of climate change adaptation, disaster risk management, urban and environmental planning, local DRRM, and information and communications technology as we help strengthen Philippine cities and towns to be more resilient. So please let me introduce our host and moderator for today, Ms. Conchita Tita Ragrario, fellow of the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners, and a member of Assure. Let's all please welcome Tita.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 7th Liveable Cities Lab on Resilience. I'm Tita Ragrahio and I'm an environmental planner. I will be your moderator for today. Today's webinar will revolve around how we can make our cities improve their resilience with climate change adaptation. Climate change adaptation, disaster risk management, urban and environmental planning, and information and communications technology, as we work together to help strengthen and enable Philippine cities and towns to be more resilient. But before we begin, just a few safety reminders for all our webinar guests. Be aware of your surroundings while the webinar is ongoing, just in case you need to stop due to an emergency. And second, especially if you're out of your homes, please practice social distancing and always stay safe. We have several mayors as participants in this webinar, and we'd like to acknowledge their presence here. Okay, let me start with Mayor Webster Letargo of Gumaca, Quezon, Mayor Lani Revilla of Bacoor City, Cavite, Mayor Lourdes Catakis of San Pedro, Laguna, Mayor Paulino Roland Jr. of Olongapo City, Zambales, Mayor Manuel Saladaga of Mahayag, Zamboanga del Sur, Mayor Walfredo Di Maguila Jr. of Biñan City, Laguna, Mayor Richard Gomez of Ormoc City, Leyte, Mayor Nicolas Yulo of Bago City, Negros Occidental, and Mayor Jennifer Tan of Tangub City, Misamis Occidental, Mayor Francis Frederick Palanca of Victoria City, Negros Occidental, Mayor Nestor Alvarez of the Sayan City of Muñoz, Nueva Ecija. Welcome, everyone. And before we begin, also other administrative reminders. This webinar will be recorded and a link to the recording will be sent after this session. Then questions may be asked through the Q&A chat box found at the bottom of your Zoom display. I'd like to point out that Zoom has a feature where you can vote for questions by clicking the thumbs up icon, so that the most voted ones come up on top of the priority list of questions. Some of these will be answered directly by our speaker or their staff in the chat box, while other questions may be parked for later to be responded to in the open forum. At the end of the webinar, we request you to please fill up your feedback survey. Your response will help us improve our Liveable Cities Lab series. And if you want a certificate of participation, you can do so by answering the corresponding question in the survey. So okay, we have also Vice Mayor Alfredo Pablo Ortega. We have right now 238 participants on Zoom and Facebook Live. So we'd like to thank you for spending your afternoon with us in this Liveable Cities seminar. We will be sending you, to the audience, poll questions. And the reason for this is we'd like to get your answers to enable us to better interact with you. So for the first poll question, you will see on the screen, where are you joining us from? So just click on any of the four choices From Luzon? Are you from Metro Manila? From Visayas or Mindanao? So please click your choice. And so majority of course are from here, 44% from Metro Manila, and 41 from Luzon. We have 8% from Mindanao and 7% from the Visayas region. Okay, so for our first presentation, I'd like to introduce Geraldine Gurley Santos. Gurley is the Vice President of the Alliance for Safe, Sustainable, and Resilient Environments, or ASSURE. She has a diploma in Urban and Regional Planning from the UP School of Urban and Regional Planning. Gurley's expertise covers urban development planning, disaster risk reduction and management, specifically on planning and capability building, environmental impact assessment, and solid waste management. She's currently part of the team engaged in JICA's urban infrastructure development in Greater Cotabato City. Her disaster risk reduction management background involves mainstreaming of DRR and CCA, climate change adaptation, under the ADB and the National Disaster Response Plan for the Office of Civil Defense, and the development of LDRRMP guidelines, also for the Office of Civil Defense. Here to present the Ridge to Reef approach, building resilience through land use planning and management, let's all welcome Ms. Gurley Santos.
Thank you, Tita. Good afternoon to everybody. Okay. I'll be presenting something regarding the Ridge to Reef approach of building resilience through land use planning and management. Ridge to Reef, or watershed management, or integrated water resource management. To some, these words are too complex to really grasp the meaning and its implication. My presentation will, I hope, give you enough ideas on what it means and how to pursue it for land use planning. Okay. Now let me share my... Okay, before that, sorry. I just had to ask one poll question for the attendees. We have more than 200 participants. Are you prepared to evacuate immediately in case of extreme flooding? Can you please answer that for me? Wow, 61% are prepared. That is really good. It gives me an indication that most of our IEC, our drills, have provided a level of preparedness. Okay. So going back to my presentation. Okay. Binahaan. Okay. The Binahaan River Flood Study came to be through various requests of LGUs, or local government units. When I say local government units, I mean cities and municipalities. The LGUs of Leyte. This was during, after Typhoon Yolanda, during 2014 and onwards. Okay. ASSURE was in Region 8 for volunteer work, assisting affected LGUs for Typhoon Yolanda. We were supported by the GIZ, or the German Technical Cooperation. And this project, the Binahaan River Flood Management Study, were involved the following. Okay. So we have ASSURE, we have the GIZ, we have academe, represented by the Visayas State University, and with them, they were a part of the bigger DOSC project, the DREAM project, and they were doing the field LiDAR project for Region 8. Okay, and also we have uh, the provincial government, the province of Leyte, the 5 LGUs, namely Palo, Tanawan, Dagami, Pastrana, Tabon, and the different regional offices of NEDA, DNR, the NIA, DPWH, and before. Okay. For our team, we were composed of environmental planners, engineers, architects who focus on the project. Okay. Now, just to describe where the site is. Okay, Binahaan is in Leyte. Okay, it is in Leyte. Okay, that's Binahaan. Here you can see that Binahaan is composed of 6 LGUs, including Ormoc and the 5 LGUs. But for the purposes of the project, only 5 LGUs requested for the assistance. Now, the whole study involved the whole watershed. Okay, here you can see the areas. Okay. The study component involves Binahan River and local creeks, Binahan River Basin boundary, the floodplain, the municipalities, and the roadway network. Okay. To give you an idea of how big Binahan River is, the whole watershed is about 25,700 hectares of land, okay, covering 6 LGUs. And the floodplain, it covers 13 kilometers of the whole river, Binahaan River. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something. This one is a flood modeling that was done by the project. It might take a few minutes to show it. I'll show you how it was done. It will reflect the inundation, the flow of the flooding, or the flood dynamics. This was done by the VSU group. Just to give you a background on this, we use the data, the rainfall data that we collected from Pag-asa for this flood modeling. For those who are interested in flood modeling or who has been doing flood modeling, the hydrologic survey was used the Onyok rainfall and as well as the hydraulic survey. We also use the maps from field LiDAR so that to give us a more accurate measurement of the extent of the flood inundation. Okay. So you can see here that we are providing the stakeholders, the provincial government, as well as the 5 LGUs, how flood will be spreading given a certain type of rainfall. Okay. So we went to study, or the VSU team went to study the flood dynamics. So in this map, you can see the 5 LGUs. We use the map of the field LiDAR, and then we came up with different scenarios or return periods of rainfall. Okay, we use 25, 50, and 100-year return period. Now for the purposes of the projects, we use the 50-year return period of rainfall. We use for the flood modeling another source of data, which is typhoon Senyang. Okay, yung rainfall data niya. Okay, so as you can see here, the extent of the flooding. Okay, it also provides the LGU not just the extent of the inundation, but also the depth of the flooding. How high was the flood water? Okay. Which is also important because that gives us the amount of or the potential damages it will provide. It will make through the flooding. Okay, so we came up with this map. Sorry, going back, almost forgot. This map, it involves all of the 5 LGUs. The map was later given to all the LGUs for their own usage. They use the maps for the updating of their land use plan, their comprehensive development plan, as well as for the preparation of their local DRRM plans. Okay, even the provincial government also use the results of the maps for their physical framework plan. Okay, so after the engineering, so for them to understand what watershed management is, we came up with the engineering component. Now we came up with the strategies. Okay. For the strategies, we were able to tap on one source for the seminar. For this project, we always optimize available resources. And one top type of resource is consultancy or experts. So we invited experts from UP, which invited experts from their project that they were involved with in DPWH, and that was World Bank project for flood control. So they were nice enough to provide us with a free workshop that that gave us the information on how to pursue integrated water resource management. So from that seminar, we came up with these strategies. Okay, but we did not stop with these strategies. We also included landscape planning approaches. Okay, so we now have different approaches when it comes to watershed management. You have your integrated water resource management. You now have our landscape design or planning approaches, as well as for the engineering and social studies. Okay. So still concepts. Some of it is still not so clear for the stakeholders. Okay. But this concept will cover the whole watershed. So in the whole watershed, shown here is the land cover map. It involves agricultural area, built up, closed forest, inland water, and the rest. So the approach, the strategies should be able to deal with different land covers. Okay. So the general planning strategy proposed to the stakeholders involve restoration and agroforestry in the upstream area, okay? Retention, detention in the midstream or the midsection of the watershed, and drainage facilitation at the floodplain area or downstream. Okay, so still, it's getting clearer, but still concept. Okay. We gave them more ideas using the strategies identified. So the project types presented to them were the following. So let's just focus on one, just to give you an idea on how we proceeded in making the stakeholders realize or see how they can proceed. In the Candies Creek, just to give you an idea of what Candies Creek looks like, its length is 18 kilometers, and it traverses through 2 municipalities, Pastrana and Dagami. Okay. So these are the pictures to give you an idea how shallow the creek is. That's one reason why it overflows. Okay. Okay. So if it's going to be a project for the retention strategy, the engineering design involves that the length is 18 kilometers, the bottom width should be 40, the height is 8 meters, and should provide the capacity for a 5.8 million cubic meter of water. So that's engineering specs, okay? That's engineering specs. So But we don't just want to have an engineering intervention. We also want people to enjoy the creek, okay? So we came up with landscape design concepts and presented this to them. So it's still concept. So for them to appreciate the concept, our landscape architect, Miss Hannah, came up with this diagrammatic model. Okay. So in this diagrammatic model, we presented to them the possibilities of what can be done and how to enjoy, to make the creek not just a source of water, flood water to flow, to facilitate the flood water, but also an area where you can enjoy. Okay. We also presented to them a perspective on how to pursue this. So with minimum budget, you can have something like this. Okay? You can still have your tree grove, okay, your slope planning, your vehicular access, the natural slope, okay, and still be able to have the water flow. Okay? And still, there's an area here where people can still be able to access and enjoy the area. Now, if they have budget, then they can spend for engineering intervention as well. And we presented a perspective showing the construction of slope dike, okay, a bridge, okay, planting, wherein the water will flow under the bridge. People will still be able to enjoy the area, okay, and it's still accessible. Okay. So far, we presented to them the strategies and concept. We present to minimize or to reduce the flooding. Then we presented to them perspective of landscaping, just to show them how it can be done. Okay. And also, we came up with specific projects that can be done within a short, medium, and long-term periods. Okay, we included the social aspect of it. This social aspect, okay, social preparation, was based on numerous surveys done in the affected barangays, the conduct of focus group discussions, as well as barangay planning. So the proposals here, the projects identified here, were based from the information collected on ground. Okay. The same with the engineering intervention. These proposals were based on surveys and studies conducted by the team, as well as with the partners, so that to be able to come up with proposals that will really, in a way, that will really solve or answer the flooding problems of the 5 LGUs. Okay. Given this, these are the things that we've done for the project. The project was done in 2015, and we turned over all of the data, the plan information, the maps, the files to the provincial government, as well as to the 5 LGUs in 2017. As you can see here, it's like bayanihan. These boats are from the provincial, these equipments are from BIFAR. Okay, so all resources were tapped and optimized. And most importantly, we talked, we communicated, we decided as a group. Okay. So that was Binahan study. So what now? What happened after? Okay. We were able to reconnect with the some of the partners in the provincial government, as well as in the Gami, Palo, and Tanawan. And we were really happy to learn that the results of the project were used in coming up with a proposal that was drafted by the provincial government. They submitted this proposal to the Climate Change Commission's People Survival Fund, and the proposal was approved. And they are waiting for the disbursement of the funds. Second, they use it in the updating of their Provincial Development and Physical Framework Plan, and the LGUs, through their different annual investment plans, they were able to identify projects that they can do. And shown in these pictures below are some of the current projects of Tanawan. I was informed that Palo, even before the turnover of the reports, they were already preparing the master plan, incorporating the results of the study. So just to summarize everything, yes, it is very hard to make complex ideas easy to understand, but you need to really focus on the major points of partnership that we in Assure learned. That one, we need to sustain open discussion on the issues and limitations of each members in the partnership. Walang persahan. Okay. Optimization of available resources of each partner agency, organization, and LGUs. We discuss this. In every technical working group, we discuss the planned activities and to where we will get the resources and who will do the actions. Okay. Accountability based on respective mandates and resources. Ownership of the projects by the LGUs using the results of the study. And each member of the partnership were given assignments based on the respective expertise. So these major points, I hope, will be able to help most of our LGUs who are attending in this webinar. Okay, that's for me. Thank you for listening. Tita?
Thank you, Girly, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I guess there's no guessing or mistaking what the project you just described is all about, as the name of the watershed itself, no? Binahaan. So flooding. There's no stopping waterfall or water flow. What popped up in your presentation to me was the quote, "Let the water flow."
Mm-hmm.
And also to just maybe remind our LGUs, what it takes to make a concept, and you presented several, from concept to reality, are the partnership practices, no?
Mm-hmm.
3 O's and 2 A's. So as you said, open discussion, optimization of resources, ownership of these projects and activities by the LGUs, and the 2 A's, accountability and assignments. So everyone has its own role in these projects, and that's what it takes to make it a success. Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to remind everyone that if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box again, or the comments section of Facebook Live if you're on Facebook, so we can answer these questions during the panel discussion later. For our next presentation, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ed Travis. Mr. Travis is a mentor for Liveable Cities, specializing in the area of ICT and intelligent cities. He has a bachelor's degree in engineering, a master's degree in computer science, and an MBA. He's currently a candidate for a PhD in the School of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of the Philippines. He has professional certificates in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, from the University of California, and in data science from the Harvard University. Mr. Travis has more than 35 years of experience working globally in the US, Europe, North Africa, and throughout Asia. He has provided expertise in spatial planning, feasibility studies, and other projects, including airports, seaports, infrastructure, and community development. He currently acts as a team lead for urban and regional planning for Parkland, where he is the technical lead for port projects, TIEZA development, and infrastructure development with projects for over 2,000 hectares. He and his team have conducted drone surveys and related projects for over 200,000 hectares throughout the Philippines for public and private enterprises, including the DOTR. He has significant experience in operations control centers, including strategy development for the Operations Control Center of Changi Airport in Singapore. So without further ado, let's all please welcome Ed Travis.
Thank you very much, Tita, and it's great to be here amongst all of you. I see now that we're up around 352 attendees, so that's wonderful, and thrilled to be a part of this, and looking forward to sharing some ideas with you as we look at applying ICT to build disaster-resilient cities and towns synergistically. Next. 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 Yeah, there. So our table of contents, or our agenda, is to briefly look at the rationale for this work, as well as the vision and approach, and then look in some detail at the challenge of how we build synergy between LGUs, and then look at an example of ICT as an enabler for building that synergy. And we'll look at the example of Kawayan, where I've had some discussions with the people in the Kawayan municipality. Next. Next. There. So when we talk about, rationale, go back one. There, okay. When we talk about rationale, we really have to look at this from two perspectives. One is the global perspective, and one is the national perspective. We'll be using the Operations Control Center, which has a central node for the integration of ICT in achieving those synergies between the municipalities. And the impetus or the rationale for this comes from a global level from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, formerly UNISDR, and the work that they've done amongst countries around the world in creating the Sendai framework, which is slated to last from 2015 to 2030. The Sendai framework provides targets and priorities for action, such as understanding disaster risk, strengthening risk governance to manage disaster risk, and so on. And these ideas and initiatives are embodied and made real through the NDRRMC organization here in the Philippines in accordance with the Republic Act 101211. So together, 101211 and the Sendai framework provide the rationale for creating operations control centers to help build resilience for the communities. Next. So vision and approach, we'll look briefly at the vision. Go ahead. Next. There. So from a conceptual perspective, the Operations Control Center addresses issues along 5 dimensions. And they're listed here: security, anticipate and monitor risks, health, respond to medical emergencies, coordinate services. And this is kind of important because, for example, the Operations Control Center, in an ideal sense, has visibility to the individual clinics and hospital centers and the actual capacity that's available, so that if there is an emergency that needs immediate response, you can send ambulances to the right location where there will be available capacity. Safety, anticipate and monitor risks. Environment, we want to protect our precious environment by integrating monitoring mechanisms which provide real-time alerts. So for example, we'll look at an example of monitoring water in a municipality to make sure that the wells don't run dry. Finally, investment, we want to protect the investment of individuals, companies, and the government. The most important point of this slide is that this entire framework is built upon a firm foundation of organization, people, policies, processes, and infrastructure, which provide the overwhelming or the overall framework for the Operations Control Center. Next. So when we start, sorry, too far, one back. There. So when we take that, that framework and we begin to look at how it operationalizes, and we look at the role, we can see that there's a lot of information coming into the OCC, including national and global sources, Intelligent Operations Center for Emergency Management from DOST. We, of course, have groups like PDRF that might participate. We have global organizations, the Global Seismographic Network. We also have local events such as marine air traffic incidents, crime, corporate accidents. All of these incidents are coming in as input to the OCC, which then generates alerts and coordination, for example, for relief organizations, military, security, government agencies that they may be linked up with. Now, it's very important that we also recognize that this is a real-time element in the system, which means it's active. It's interpreting the state of your municipality on a real-time basis. And it does that through the use of ICT and specifically through the use of IoT, or what's known as Internet of Things sensors out in the field, which provide information back to the OCC. And let's look at the next slide to see how that works. Next. Oh, sorry, we're going to talk about building synergy first. Next. So the concept here is that in the yellow, you might have an intelligent city or a larger LGU that has the resources to put in place a fairly capable operations control center. And then it's surrounded by other LGUs, which may not have the same level of resources or capabilities available to leverage this kind of technology. So the idea is that together with the central LGU, you find ways to network to the other LGUs to provide information and proper response in a synergistic fashion, okay? So the next slide. If you look at the left side, the conceptual model, we have the LGU at the center, which is the larger LGU or the intelligent city, surrounded by other smaller LGUs or perhaps barangays that are networked together through a network of control centers to provide services to companies, to people, to government agencies. And it's, again, it's looking at real-time data on a daily basis, as well as the event-specific items for hazards and disasters. So when we look at the real-world implementation, the blue circle at the top, we have the national and international links to various organizations, which provide information coming in. And then at the municipal hub, we have the actual operations control center. That municipal hub would have status viewing screens. For example, here we show international and national information, safety-related screens, infrastructure-related screens, and barangay status. So basically, the input data allows you to have separate screens looking at the current status of the barangay or the LGU or the network regarding its infrastructure and safety considerations. And then at the bottom, outside at the network, we can see that there are the other operating control centers at barangays or smaller LGUs, which may not have as big of an operation control center. In many cases, they may only have 1 or 2 screens at most to be able to link into a network together with the main LGU. Okay, next. So let's talk about how this actually builds by looking at ICT as an enabler. Next screen. So this is a very crowded screen. Let me explain this. So at the center, of course, we have the Operations Control Center to help create resilient communities. On the left side, we can have subject matter experts assisting in the creation and monitoring and maintenance. And there are many, many subject matter experts throughout the Philippines available to help build such a network for your LGU. People from PDRF, I'm sure, would be excited to help. Assure stands by through myself, and there are elements of the University of the Philippines, the National Center for Transportation Services, SERP, UP Planades, and other universities as well. I've had some detailed discussions with DOTR. They also stand by to assist. On the right side, there's information sharing and collaboration. I visited the Philippine Red Cross. They have a wonderful operations control center that has a network already in place geared towards their emergency response locations. Would be great to link into their network as well. DOTR has an existing operations control center. It's mostly showing information. PDRF has a great system in place. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes. And there are others. DOST and Five Oaks have information available which can be shared. And at the center for the OCC itself, there are various technologies that are available today to actually create this for an LGU. And the key here is that we want to do this in a cost-effective manner. So for example, if we look at the course system, a course system which is web-enabled could be utilized. Confinity is one such example for Raging River. There are resources, for example, ASTI has the ARQ resource available for information. Also, there's a company in Texas, Vitro, which has enabled blockchain technology on sensor transmission elements so that the sensor signals from out in the field coming into the operations control center are secured through blockchain technology, either Ethereum or Bitcoin. Those are two examples of how blockchain are implemented. The Department of Transportation stands by ready to help by integrating real-time Waze data through business intelligence and the G Suite. Perhaps Globe would help with bringing in signals, and of course Core from DOST is a source of big data or storage for big data. Next screen. So IoT implementations, I've got 5 examples here. Number 1, sensors could be placed in water sources throughout the LGU and then transmitted back for status screens at the Operations Control Center. This gives you a real-time view of the water supply in your LGU, enabling you to understand the status and potential emergencies before they happen. Power, there are some very simple, very inexpensive things that can be done to look at the power grid. For example, there are these transformers. They look like big barrels that sit on power poles. And those barrels have oil inside that rise in temperature if they're overextended. And you can put a temperature sensor on that to understand whether or not you're overburdening the network and send someone out to have a look and see what can be done before you actually lose power. Number 3, alarm systems within the community can be networked, critical point facilities, even commercial opportunities with businesses in the network. Number 4, you can connect existing aquaponic systems to understand the status of the aquaponic system out in the field. So temperature, water levels within the aquaponic system can be measured remotely, maximizing the utilization of your engineering resources. IoT 5, again, talks about DOTR and the system they've got with Waze, which can be deployed to help control traffic lights or provide information to traffic enforcers out in the field. Next screen. So let's look at an example implementation with Kauai'an. This is a municipality I've had a lot of discussions with. The idea there was to have the CBD district as the host for the main operations control center, and then 2 barangays as a start in the network. Let's look at the next screen. Next. So here's a view of their operations control center circa 2019 under development. They have a network of screens and processing stations. This is as it is under development. It's actually farther advanced now. And this would be an example of the central node in a network. And this has input coming in from, or would have input coming in from IoT, from sensors in the field. For example, in the next screen, we see, next, we can see an aquaponics site, which currently exists in Kawayan, and it's already instrumented with sensors for water flow, temperature, and it's also instrumented with activators. For example, it can do a mister system through a solenoid if the temperature elevates above a warning level. In addition, there are solenoids to raise water levels and control the pH should levels go beyond the threshold values. So eventually, Kawayan wants to have many of these sites throughout their municipality. They could all be linked together through the Operations Control Center, and the municipality can monitor the current status on an ongoing basis every single day. Next slide. So there's actually another slide which talks about funding sources. And there are many, many funding sources which are available. The funding sources include appropriations and other programs which are available through the government to help make this a reality for LGUs as they want to network. So there's the screen actually. The funding, we can see here general appropriations, National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Funds, donor funds, adaptation and risk financing. And the initial build, depending upon the scope, doesn't have to be too expensive. For example, if you have 4 LGUs, you're only looking at about 3 to 4 million, according to a budget that we developed for DOST. So that's about it. Very, very interested to talk to other LGUs, should they be interested in pursuing this. That's it. Thank you very much. Tita, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Ed.
Sure.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, Gurley's presentation emphasized partnership practices. In Ed's presentation, what still rings in my ears is what he said posed as a challenge, which is building synergy to bridge between concept and capability and connectivity with ICT as making it all happen, as the enabler. One example of an operations center, control center, is the province of Albay. Our next speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce him, is Dr. Cedric Daep, who sometime in my past, we worked together to conduct business continuity trainings. Dr. Cedric Daep is a department head of the Albay Public Safety and Emergency Management Office. He has been involved in disaster risk management for more than 3 decades, and he has focused his studies in meteorology, volcanology, and seismology, and was responsible for the creation of the APSEMO, of the Albay Public Safety and Emergency Management Office, way back in 1994. He continues to supervise DRRM programs, policies, and budgets since then as head of the APSEMO, and has achieved the zero casualty objective of his office. And for his efforts, he has been a resource person in many conferences and trainings, both here and abroad, and has received numerous awards. Let us call on Dr. Cedric Daep, and then to share the experience of Albay province's APSEMO. Dr. Cedric?
Yeah, thank you, Tita. And let me share my presentation. This is focused on the protection of life by preventing casualties during calamities. Since calamities are not avoided, even if we put in so many developments, like right now we are having an ongoing risk reduction program, structural mitigation in the amount of 2.3 billion to protect population and resources against the harm, against flood and landslide. But still, we cannot avoid a situation that may threaten population. Therefore, I will be presenting to you the zero casualty strategy for the province. And for this, we actually concentrating on, especially on real-time warning using both scientific method and indigenous strategy. Okay. Now, as a context, of course, we have a lot of threats: climate, weather, volcanic, seismologic, even geologic hazards. We have them. So we have a lot of strategies done, and specific hazards we are dealing them with specific strategies and preparations. But for our articulation of putting disaster risk management in action, particularly on protecting the lives of the people, of course, we apply governance, focused on institutional strategies, policy, and the best articulation is budget, of course. And then the basic principle that we apply for zero casualty is we believe more on evacuation rather than rescue. Since rescue is reactive, while warning and evacuation is more on proactive, doing things done before the impact happens. And we institutionalized, I think this is already 26 years ago, the first disaster risk management office in the Philippines, named before as Provincial Disaster Management Office, and now Hawaii Public Safety and Emergency Management Office. And we basically believe on research requirements as its product is input in planning and operations, particularly on this production. And talking about preparedness and mitigation, we consider risk map. Actually, it's not hazard map, but risk map, considering population, exposure, resources, and some other things, not only as input in risk reduction planning, but a major input in development planning. And the community needs to know the threats, and therefore, even if we apply strategies, if the communities do not know the nature and effects of natural calamities, and then everything is ineffective. And therefore, we start doing training and education in the community by way of establishing awareness of nature and effects. And talking about typhoon or tropical cyclone, we have procedures to follow. Sometimes we are worried and we are scared because of what has been published on Facebook. That, oh, a typhoon is coming. It's still about 2,000 kilometers away from far, but they're already established in situation like it's scary or something. But far from far, we still have to establish severe as its severity, or it's not, then we just maintain monitoring. But if we know that the situation is severe, then we wait then to come closer, and once apparently we start developing the scenario for planning purposes. And these are the scenario. And for direct hit, I cannot explain that well because of limited time. But for direct hit, we do 6 major hazards. And also within the radius of strong wind, 6 major hazards. And then I'll present to you what are those hazards later on. Outside the strong wind, 4 major hazards and so on. But the most important is the 6th scenario. The typhoon is so far, but we are affected by other weather systems. We might think we're not affected because the typhoon is so far, but there could be other major hazards to affect. And so with item 4 and 5, northeast monsoon, with typhoon passing through the southwest, and we consider enhanced southwest monsoon. For the other way around, item 5, enhanced northeast monsoon, and we prepare for rainfall, bringing in flood, landslide, mudflow, and other plus flood and other flow. Now, the zero casualty formula that we developed in 1995, immediately upon institutionalizing our office, was the early warning system, communication protocol, and evacuation procedure. And this was tested in 1995 during the super typhoon Ramin, where everywhere in Region 5 had a lot of casualties, but in Albay it was zero. That was the start. And then up to now, we're still sustaining the zero casualties. But in terms of warning system, we followed this flow. With weather station like PAGASA to do prediction and forecast, while the detection on flood, detection on possible landslide, detection on the wind, destructive wind, storm surge are done by the communities themselves, which is the basis of decision making. And once we have the decision for the detected threat and hazards, then we start communicating as our next would be mobilization. Now, for the criteria on destructive winds, we do wind decision rule. And for storm surge, again, decision rule by wind strength and for flood, hourly rainfall, on mud flows, still hourly rainfall, but on landslide, antecedent rainfall with a lead time of maybe 3 to 6 hours. Flash flood and debris flow, hourly rainfall, and groundwater saturation. We have separate formula for them as basis of our warning issuance, warning information for them to evacuate. Without warning information issued on a real-time basis, then evacuation will fail. And then without explanation and without community clear understanding of the criteria, still evacuation will fail. Now what about the communication protocol? Of course, we have the flow communication system, but the translation of that communication, what kind of information are we translating to them for them to make action based on the information given? Because PAGASA provides us with the weather, severe weather bulletin, giving us the science information, the data coming from the instruments, but there is no interpretation and analysis as basis for decision making. And therefore, we analyze the data coming from the severe weather bulletin issued by PAGASA, and then the analysis interpretation is the basis of our information issued through official advisory. And that information is a product of some computation that we will know what time is the expected strength of the wind to destroy things and structure. What is the expected time that the rainfall will come so that we will be able to evacuate 3 hours before the flood? What is the expected time that the landfall will be expected so that everybody must be in a safe location? We have those computations done before we prepare the advisory so that when advisory is issued that tells about what to do, when, and why. And then transmitted through broadcast media, especially those in the far-flung barangays without social media, so they have to listen over the radio to get information about the advisory. Then forecast, real-time and forecast and group chat for the local DRR. Now, on protocols on evacuation procedure, number 1 is with warning criteria, with information, procedures, and transmitted through communication protocol. This cannot be put into being without evacuation plan. Now, every barangay has their own evacuation plan. So much so that those are the basis of moving people from danger zone to a safer location. So this is the process. I don't think the further elaborate this because I think you have a copy of this. Just in case you have some details to ask them, I will be free to ask you even on email or later on after this conference, you can ask me questions. Okay, in terms of evacuation movement, with this pandemic situation, we consider response or preparedness on typhoon by way of complex disaster, and therefore we're not doing the preemptive evacuation because this is done on the timeline hazard specific. We don't do forced evacuation because instead we do assisted evacuation because they have other things to bring during evacuation movement. But for this, we do expanded evacuation because we don't have enough facility to provide. And then we need to reduce 50% of our population occupying the evacuation centers because of pandemic. And then they have to follow the health protocol and everything that is being asked by the IATF. Now, on pandemic situation, complex disaster, this is one thing that we experienced for 2 major typhoons already, Tisoy, and the latest one was often. We did that, and it was so effective without casualty due to typhoon and without local transmission because of uh, combination with the approach for health protocol. And therefore, for this one, we exerted effort to secure funding from external donors so that we would be able to establish safe evacuation centers, and the design is even safe to magnitude 8 earthquake. And this is also the design for JICA support, and therefore they know where to go. Sometimes people do not go to evacuation once they are asked to move out from the danger zone because they don't know where to go. So one thing more that is important in the evacuation procedure is, number one, they must have their own specific and designated evacuation center by group. But for these pandemic times, our evacuation procedure must be, they must know each other as much as possible, family. They must go together, not with somebody else that they don't know, because there could have some situations to happen like discrimination or something like that. So we have our own, a new rule for a complex disaster with pandemic. But now we are also considering homestay evacuation. They are more safe in homestay evacuation than in other unsafe evacuation that does not follow the evacuation criteria. Still, you need to formulate your safe evacuation criteria. Otherwise, we will be evacuating people for them to die in the evacuation centers. And aside from the warning and evacuation procedures that we do, what we are doing right now is relocating people, but we don't call them as relocation site, but we call them as new safe settlements. Because sometimes, because of culture, they don't want to be called evacuees or relocatees, whatever. But once they are asked to transfer to new safe development, safe settlement, that is socially acceptable to them. And it's easy. So we have a lot of social preparation done and everything, follow the process. But in this item, in this aspect, what works well here is research. If relocation activity is done without research, and then the product of research is recommendations, the basis of development, then we might expect cases of failures. And therefore, I would suggest research is very important in development. So I think with the limited time, I'll just show you the relocation sites, some relocation sites. In the safer location, they are now in peace of mind because even during typhoon, even during earthquake, the design is good, and therefore they don't have to think for something else that is scary or for them to re-evacuate or something else because they are already safe. And then with this safe community, plus their livelihood support, and they are living conveniently and safe. This is one way of showing a resilient community through the relocation program, which support facilities and mobility, even on accessibility, utility support, and everything are provided. If not by the provincial government, but by some stakeholders, some other donors, both domestic and international. And these are all the areas with complete relocation sites or new settlement sites. And most of them are funded by the national government, if not by the external support from the international generous donors. So this is the figure. This is the number of population relocated. And that's about all for my presentation. And I didn't present any development strategy. I just focus on the zero casualty strategy because by nature, calamities cannot be avoided, but we have to save people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cedric Daep. During a conference on DRRM some time ago that I attended, I remember a former governor of Albay was saying, name a hazard, a disaster hazard. We have it in Albay. Name a disaster. We've already experienced it. Experiencing disasters is tragic enough, but losing lives because of them is even more tragic. For 25 years, the APSEMO, their primary objective was spelled out, and it's zero casualty. And for that long 25 years, the office has been achieving that objective. So kudos to the Albay APSEMO. Thank you, Dr. Cedric. Allow me now to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Veron Gabaldon. As the Executive Director of Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation, Ms. Veron leads the strategic direction, programs, and administration of the organization towards the achievement of PDRF's vision to build resilience in businesses and communities in the country. Recognized as one of the active women leaders in the DRR community, she led the design, launch, and operation of the country's only private sector-led operations center in Clark, Pampanga. As a strong advocate of the way private sector engages before and during crises, she has been active in the connecting business. To present the initiatives of PDRF, let us all welcome Ms. Veron Gabaldon. Ms. Veron.
Good afternoon. Let me just open, okay, there you go. All right, so let me just share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for inviting our organization to this webinar. Can you see my slide now? Can you see my slide now?
Yeah, yes, put it on full screen, Veron.
Okay.
Presentation format.
Presentation format. Let me just okay. Sorry, I'm having technical problem here. Wait, not a good. Why can't I show slide? Show. Okay. All right. So almost there. Almost there. Okay, there you go. And then slide share. Sorry. And then this one. Okay, is it now on? Can you see my slide now?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to introduce our organization. Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation is a major private sector vehicle and coordinator for disaster risk reduction. And our members are composed of the business sector. And we have been in operation in 2009. And I think everyone remembers Typhoon Hondoy. And in the aftermath of that, then President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo think of bringing together the public and private sector to help in the rehabilitation of the devastation of the massive flooding in Metro Manila. And so we continued to harness the expertise of the private sector. And in 2013, We all remember Super Typhoon Yolanda. And we strengthened our membership then and brought in more companies to join us. And one of the key lessons that we learned in Yolanda is that it is more wise and cost effective to invest in preparedness rather than in disaster response and recovery. And so we shifted our focus on building the resilience of the communities and businesses. And in 2015, we rightfully and formally changed our name from recovery to resilience. So good thing they both are starts with letter R. So we didn't have any problem changing our logo. So that's PDRF for you. And we are led by the captains of our business industries here in the Philippines. And for good measure, we have Cardinal Tagle. And I just would like to show you here that the members of our board are, from a competing businesses, but in the desire to build the resilience of the country, as we are, prone to hazards, we have a unified mindset in this vision. And our leaders, of course, we have our president, Mr. Meili, and Mr. Luz, who is also the chairman of Liveable Cities as our chief resilience officer. What is unique about PDRF is how we organize our members, and it is through a cluster system. This is to show the core competencies of our member companies. And we patterned this cluster system with that of the UN and the government to make sure that we are interoperable, and coordination, collaboration with these agencies will be efficient and effective. So we have 8 clusters there, and within those clusters are member companies in that particular industry. PDRF in 2016 was recognized and invited to be part of Connecting Business Initiative. This is an initiative of UNDP and UN OCHA to further strengthen the advocacy of a private sector engagement. And so in 2016, they launched this initiative in Istanbul, and PDRF became the model for building local business disaster management networks around the world. Our work is across the country, and we cover the pillars of the DRRM phases, and we work through our partners in collaboration with the government agencies, NGOs, and also the humanitarian sector. Disaster recovery is still a major pillar of our organization, of our mandate. And within disaster recovery, we have 5 pillars there: education, livelihood, environment, shelter, water, and sanitation. We also have a community resilience program. We actually started this in 2015 when HSBC approached us to develop for them a community-based program. And we developed this with the thinking that the community, a business, can only be strong if the community surrounding it is strong. So that is the very basic premise of community resilience. And in doing so, we need to have very close collaboration with the LGUs. And I'm very happy that we have our local government units here, and we have been working closely with them in this project. And throughout the years, we have evolved this community resilience program, and we included already innovations. We did participatory 3D mapping, which is actually appreciated by the LGUs because all the stakeholders in the community are involved, and that they have a way of doing a planning. It is not only to show where the path to the evacuation centers are, but it is also used for their urban planning. So to date, we are working with Makati and Quezon City in this project. Another major program of PDRF is on learning and development. You see, when you focus on preparedness, much of it is imparting information. and providing structured programs, learning programs for your constituencies. And to your right are some of the modules that we have been teaching for the past 3 years. Another major pillar of PDRF is our business continuity and organizational resilience. Business continuity is a best practice, a framework coming from the private sector. And what we did is, number one, is to simplify it to make sure that even the smaller micro and small medium enterprises can use it and prepare for any eventualities. So we have the MSME resilience, and this is in partnership with Department of Trade and Industry and PhilExport and Chambers of Commerce. We also look into the supply chain of our member companies. And so in another webinar happening as well, we have supply chain webinars to make sure that the response and the response for COVID-19 is flowing up. The response for COVID-19 is established. And another program we have here, which will be of good information to our local government unit partners, is on public sector continuity planning. So we developed this in partnership with Office of Civil Defense. We are the technical consultant of OCD, technical assistance. We provided technical assistance to OCD to develop the PSCP. And to date, just 2 months ago, we launched the guidebook that is now being used by the government agencies. So we enjoin you to please look into the PSCP, and if you have any questions and you need any assistance from us, you can reach out to PDRF. And we go now to the meat of our presentation this afternoon, talking about our PDRF Operations Center. So actually the idea of coming up with an operations center started in 2016, when in one of our board meetings, our leaders were asking, how can we further strengthen the collaboration and the preparedness of the private sector, particularly the business sector. And the idea of having a platform where there is constant monitoring, there is constant information being provided to the network came to fore. And so in 2016, we started a prototype in Makati. We tested it. That's the nature of the private sector. You test it and see if it works. And we were quite happy with the result. And in 2018, we decided already to build the main operations center in Clark, Pampanga. So the photos over the upper left are some of the rooms that we have in the facility. So the heart of this facility is a platform, a ArcGIS based platform, which is we call Handa. So we use this to monitor weather systems and all other hazards. And this is a password protected system accessible by our member companies, where they can plot their own facilities. And so they see where they will see what hazards are present in their facilities, and they can make informed decision how to further strengthen or take care of their facilities and their workforce. And part of this Handa is the reporting system and the dashboard. So we have this dashboard. Our member companies can report to us real time what is happening on the ground. And this is also our platform to coordinate the efforts, especially when we do respond to emergencies. So this is just an example of the response that we do. As I mentioned a while ago, the cluster system is about harnessing the expertise and resources of the private sector. And on the top left photo will show you how we have been providing assistance to the agency, the SWD, with logistics. And we also, in partnership with the UN and the local government units and the Office of Civil Defense, members of the NDRRMC, we also join post-disaster needs assessment. And of course, we have been asked to assist them in restoring power and other expertise, reaching out to member companies to provide technical expertise and resources to affected areas. To date, for 2019, this has been our activation stat. So we've activated our operations center on blue alert 15 times. We've been on red alert for twice. And there are 5 emergencies that has been escalated from blue to red. And we've been continuously providing advisories to our member companies. And this will also show you the number of earthquakes that we have monitored in 2009, and that in 2019 also we had a total of 20 tropical cyclones. We did have the longest activation. We were activated on red alert for 24 days in the aftermath due to the earthquake, the strings of earthquake in Mindanao. This is just an example of the statistics of our response in 2019. And this is also a product of the collaboration and coordination that we do among all stakeholders using our platform, Handa, and being operated in our operations center. And during peacetime, what do we do with the facility? It's a big facility, and we make it hardworking. So it is not only being used during disaster time to respond to disasters, but during peacetime, we use it for learnings. No? So we have a lot of learning programs, fellowship programs with Brown University in that facility. And also, we conduct simulation exercises there. We join simulation exercises, drills with the government, and also conducted within the facility, hosted and co-organized simulation exercises. So that's something, if you're going to come up with your own operation center at the LGU level, that's something that you can think about, making it productive even during peacetime. This COVID-19 response, of course, the private sector has been very active in supporting the government. No? So when we had a lockdown in March, immediately we saw the need to provide and augment the support of and support the government, especially in taking care of our vulnerable sector. So we did several response activities in partnership with our members. So what PDRF is doing and the Operations Center is to match, to see the needs, to get the information and then match whatever is needed with the resources of the private sector. To date, we were able to, our project Ugnayan was able to reach 14.2 million individuals or 2.8 million families. And just to mention that Project Ugnayan actually was led by Mr. Bill Luz here. Yeah. And for also, we looked into our healthcare workers at that time. There was a very dire low supply of PPEs, and we came up with a kaagapay. Reason why I'm sharing this the story of kaagapay is that this is where you will see the how we operationalize the phrase harnessing the expertise of the private sector. So because of the global scarcity of PPEs, PDRF, the Philippines, compared to, at that time, compared the cases of COVID-19, compared to the global numbers, pale in comparison. And so when we reach out to global suppliers, of course, they will go for the highest bidders. And so we partnered with Zuilig Pharma and took advantage of their global supply chain and pooled resources from the private sector. In that way, we were able to bring in very fast resources from other countries and provided PPEs to our hospitals and healthcare workers. We also partnered with Brown University. At that time, there was little knowledge on how to manage patients, those patients afflicted with COVID-19, and how to take care of themselves also as frontliners. And so we brought in Project Pag-asa. It's a train-the-trainer program for the healthcare workers. The program graduated 77 healthcare workers who in turn trained 2,103 healthcare workers across the country. So during this time of pandemic, of course, one of our major pillar, which is the learning and development and the training program, we were not able to, do our trainings. And so we made a conscious decision very fast and very early on that we will transform, we will embrace the digital and do a digital transformation. And we did this learning management system, IADAP, which is now fully operational, and most of our modules are already available here. Because our thinking is that, during pandemic, the typhoon will not stop. They will come, okay? We have active volcanoes, we have active fault lines, and so they are bound to happen, knock on wood, I hope not. But so the idea, the advocacy of preparing the community must continue. And also one of our focus really is in making sure that is monitoring the impact of the pandemic with our micro and small medium enterprises. In fact, as early as March, we already did series of surveys to find out how they are. And one of the common issues that we have learned so far has been lack of a source of information. And so we established this one-stop hub for our MSMEs where they are provided with real-time information, official information about COVID, and how they can pivot their businesses to make them adaptive and redesign their operations in the light of COVID-19. One of the features of CCAP is the mentoring for the MSME. So we have regular schedules there where we have industry experts to teach our micro, small, medium enterprises in different ways to redirect their businesses and make them operational even during pandemic. So there have been several local government units who reached out to us and partner with us for CCAP. We're looking for partners. Please do reach out to us. We'd like to work with you and work together to help our micro and small medium enterprises in your localities. PDRF is also an active member and the coordinator for the private sector and Task Force T3, and that's also being led by Mr. Bill Luz. Yeah. So at the heart of all the work of PDRF, what we have shared is is being fueled by our partnership. So we do believe in public-private partnerships. That's how we do our work. And we also ensure that the active involvement of the private sector is there and recognized by our government partners to make sure that we are part in strengthening the disaster resilience of our country. And so this is my last slide already, and I think for the past few minutes that I have talked, my key takeaways for our dear partners would be: one is the private sector has a role to play as far as DRR is concerned. So engage them and collaborate and involve them in planning. Number two, embrace technology. There is a way to have a data and science-based analysis and decision-making for us there if we work together. And then lastly, let's have a common language That is the reason why we co-develop with the Office of Civil Defense the public sector version of the business continuity framework of the business sector. In that manner, we have common language, the RTOs and all the framework to make sure that all our essential services are up and running, even in the worst case scenario. So thank you very much and good afternoon to all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Veron. It does take a whole community, even a global community, to help build resilience. And we realize that from your presentation, underscoring the vital role, of course, of business organizations in the whole range of disaster responses. We now call on our next speaker, Mr. Emmanuel Manny Estrada. Engineer Estrada, his 38-year career in the telecommunications industry includes stints in the academe, in government service, specifically the National Telecommunications Commission, and in the private sector, particularly in the field of telecommunications. Manny is currently the Senior Vice President of Technology Strategy and Service Integration of Globe Telecom, Inc. Please welcome Engineer Manny Estrada.
Kababahalang isipin ang pagpasok ng mga kapaminsalang typhoon season sa gitna ng nararanasang pandemya. Kung saan, importante ang internet at communications dahil sa marami ang naka-work from home at nagdi-distance learning. Kaya naman, mahalaga na matatag ang infrastruktura ng communications network laban sa mga pinsalang dulot ng natural disasters at climate-related hazards gaya ng bagyo. Bilang major provider ng telecommunication services sa bansa, Globe is committed to building a resilient network designed to withstand natural disasters.
Resilient network means aside a network that never fails as much as possible. Tumaas kasi yung standards ng Philippines, no, given climate change. So it means we have to retrofit so that we can allow it to sustain the additional standards.
Armed with lessons and experiences from the past, pinag-iigting din ng Globe ang pagkakaroon ng mga rapid deployment solutions at pag-apply ng angkop na mitigating factors para maiwasan at agad na masolusyonan ang malalaking pinsala gaya ng power outages, pagkasira ng mga cell sites at pagkabunot o pagkaputol ng mga kable dala ng malalakas na bagyo, lindol at landslides.
We've always been looking for newer, more efficient equipment and technologies. A cell site on wheels is essentially a complete cell site with all the electronics and hardware. Then we have also tower on wheels. Yung controller on a light truck naman is access concentrator for the mobile telephone network.
Habang sinisiguro ng lahat ang kaligtasan ng pamilya sa loob ng kani-kanilang mga bahay, Globe, through its Network Technical Group, stands in the front lines to ensure we stay connected during these critical times.
LTG has always stood by principles of agility and efficiency. To be quick whenever necessary. Nasa harap kami kaagad, binabantayan namin ang mga parating na bagyo. Ika nga, pag sinabi natin typhoon season na, nandyan na kami, nakahanda na kami.
At sa pamamagitan ng pagpapatupad ng business continuity management, mas nagiging epektibo ang pagresponde at pag-recover ng team sa mga nasa salantang equipment. Sa tulong na rin ng local government units na handang makiisa sa pagre-restore ng network services sa kani-kanilang lugar, lalo na sa panahon ng sakuna kung saan kailangan ang komunikasyon.
Oras na nandiyan na parating na bagyo, wala nang tulugan niya.
Kaugnay nito, nakikipagtulungan din ang Globe sa iba't ibang sektor para sa mga disaster relief and response initiatives.
Everybody works together, lalo na ngayon na pandemic. There are well-established process para we will be able to provide the necessary coverage and signal to the community.
Globe is committed to building a network that can withstand the impact of climate-related risks and natural disasters to provide continued connectivity.
Our focus is in ensuring business continuity during disaster and extreme weather events, and by initiating projects that allow Globe to effectively respond and recover to major disasters. We are able to help and work hand in hand with the government in providing the much-needed communication service to the people.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, depending on where you are at this point in time. I'd like to call your attention to the video you that was just shown. And just to give you some background about our business continuity practices, we have started the practice as early as 2006. I recall that very specifically because I was one of those who was part of the team that initiated business continuity practices on the network side. We've been talking about resilient communities and resilient networks, but the reality is resilient networks do not just happen by chance. When we talk about resilient networks, it is a network that is able to withstand vulnerable changes or reduces its vulnerability to dramatic changes or extreme events and responds creatively to economic and social and environmental changes. So that it becomes a continuing service and you're able to deliver communications, which is very, very crucial in times of emergencies and even during this recent pandemic. As again, resilient networks don't just happen. A lot of planning goes with it, and it is a product of thinking ahead. And it's a careful and insightful planning and execution with all of the potential risks that you have in mind. And that is the reason why in the video that you just showed, that was just shown here, we talked about changing our standards, retrofitting our sites so that they are now in accordance to the new structural codes of the Philippines, in accordance to the changes in wind loads, in climate change. And that's how it is. And the other thing that is very important also is that other than reducing the risk to itself, it should include reducing the risk to all of the other peoples and the communities that host our network itself. So overall, resiliency is not just about being able to recover after an unexpected or disruptive event. It is about having the right framework to begin with and complementing it with continuity and sustainable initiatives. Next, I will share with you one particular initiative that we have started sometime in 2010 when we started looking into green energy, and we'll put some context to that as well. Let me share my slides. This will be a very short one because I know that there's a whole string of information that we need to run through, and let me share you the screen. Can you see the screen now? Okay. Our focus of discussion right now is looking into an energy efficient network. Now let me put some context into that one. Telecommunications networks is one of the biggest consumers and users of energy itself. If you put that into perspective, the more that we build, the more that it consumes electricity. And therefore, managing our energy efficiency is very important for us for very important reasons. The very first one is for us to be able to reduce the cost, but a more important one is to protect the environment and make sure that our carbon footprint is reduced even as we provide more network, more capacity, and more services to our towards achieving a digitally enabled nation. The principles of a resilient network is pretty much applicable to livable city initiatives. In a livable city, the city focuses on the quality of life. The sustainable city is a city that has the ability to sustain the quality of life we value or which we aspire. In the network side, it's pretty much the same. A resilient network, a sustainable network is one which is able to provide the services specifically when and when it is needed. So the moment you have disasters, the peak of traffic is increased because you now need to communicate across, whether it be with first responders, with government agencies, with people being in relief and rescue missions, and even communicating to their loved ones. So in that case, the very same principle of building resilient network applies. A livable city has to be planned with the future in mind and with the disasters and the risks in mind as well, and not in hindsight. So it's not about having a city that's able to recover immediately, but as a city that is able to reduce its vulnerabilities other than being able to recover quickly. The telecommunications industry, again, is one of our biggest consumers of electricity. You put that in context of a growing city, of urban influx where there's increased use of energy and water, which are very important resources to sustain day-to-day work. As the community grows, as the community requires more digital services, more communication services, then the more the telecommunications needed to be built, increasing the use of energy as well. If you put that into in a different perspective, it is a vicious cycle of digitalization, increasing population, increasing industrialization, and increasing requirements for energy, plus the need to sustain the networks that will support this increase in population and increase in digitalization. So it becomes a very complex solution, and that's why early on we started looking into green solutions. In order to address this, we look at several things. First, collection of information from our existing network, and then it's looking at green solutions so that we're able to reduce our carbon footprint and at the same time not become an additional load for our electrical utilities as well. The results of that particular initiative is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. We see a wonderful Philippines where using our impact to the environment is very important in order to sustain the growing community and the modernization and the adoption of a digital lifestyle for all our citizens. So we're looking to affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth fueled by technology and digital enablers, industries, innovation, and infrastructure, very critical today as people become more tuned to a digital lifestyle, and then sustainable cities and community. What do we have as of this time? We have implemented a remote management system that's able to provide capability for energy management, site security, efficient and preventive maintenance with the ability for us to maximize our existing assets on the ground, environmental management, which is able to detect fire, flood, temperature changes, and humidity, and even intelligent cooling management system to help us with our energy efficient programs. We have asset inventory management and of course, financial management in order for us to be able to provide OPEX reductions and expense analysis, find out where the big spend is coming from and find ways and means to reduce those spends. With the remote management system, we look at improved operational efficiency and cutting down expenditures incurred from damages. Next. We are currently leveraging efficient solutions. On this particular page, you will see about 8 different power systems that we have been using or are about to use in our network today. On the first one, we have a fuel cell system. This has been deployed in 420 sites and at about 5 kilowatts for each site. Why is it important? Because it requires lower maintenance, lowers our cost, and at the same time, it is not relying on fossil fuel. We've looked into DC hybrid generators because it consumes lesser fuel. due to its load following ability compared to an equivalent AC genset and has a longer service interval. It has been deployed in 52 sites. We have veered away from lead acid batteries, and we have started to replace this with lithium-ion batteries. No? We have over 20,000 modules installed. These are 10 times more, in terms of operation and lifespan, and does not pose the risk of lead acid batteries. But even then, lithium-ion batteries that have been consumed and used are also environmentally disposed in accordance to our environmental principles and policies. We've started to look into supercapacitors. This is fairly new. It has no chemicals in it. It just uses the principles of a capacitor, and it's used to store energy to provide a potential alternative for lithium-ion cells in the future. We have deployed solar on grid solutions in about 67 sites. This is going to increase as we go and deploy more solar on for off-site solutions and the rest. So all in all, with all of this that we have been put in place, from 2017 to this time, we have been able to reduce or to save about 155 million pesos in terms of normal fuel costs. But that is not just the cost efficiency or the cost savings that we're looking at. It is also the fact that in doing this and adopting these green solutions that we were able to actually reduce our carbon footprint as we go along. The other energy saving that we have used is the conversion of our previous fluorescent lights into LED lighting. When you look at this, these were all deployed in our data centers in our key network nodes. This has been deployed in practically all of the sites with a total saving of about 17 million pesos just for the 2019 Save to Grow programs. Other than that, again, if you simply look at the savings, you would say, well, this is some amount as well. But the reality is you're able to reduce your requirements from the electricity utilities and then to reduce your carbon footprint. Today, our data centers have a rated power usage effectiveness of about 1.36 in 2019. The 80% of our core network facility data centers fall under efficient, while 20% is not inefficient due to low collocation of clients. We believe this will be improved as we adopt more and more of these green solutions in the future. The key takeaways from both this adoption of green energy and the videos that you have shown. The first one, as we were saying, that resilient networks don't just happen. It's a product of thinking ahead, careful, insightful planning, and requires a holistic development with the future in mind and the well-being of all the members of the community the network serves by providing connectivity. Holistic because it's not just about the technology, but also the process and how to deploy, hence the business continuity practices and the environmental practices that we have, and the people readiness as well. As you can see in the video, our head for operations keeps on saying that every time something is about to happen, we are ready for it. And they have proven time and again that they are ready for it as well. Resiliency is not simply about being able to recover after an unexpected and disruptive event. It's about having the right framework to begin with and complementing it with continuity and sustainable initiatives. That is the reason why Globe embarked on clean energy and energy efficient initiatives in line with its commitment to the SDGs, because we know for a fact that as we build more communities, as the communities expand outward from the cities, then we will need more power. We will need more facilities, we will need more network. And therefore, to reduce our need for electricity is primordial in our trust to make sure that we don't also burden our electrical utilities and our power plants with the network that we needed to build to support our continuing growth and entry into the digital network. Resilient networks are developed with existing and emergencies as a key planning input. Since the time we started our BCM, we have always looked into geological hazards, peace and order situation threats, practically most everything. There's even a plan about how we will recover the service if the big one strikes. And this plan is being updated every year, annually, and religiously. So in that way, we're able to cope with all of these risks, and at the same time, we do not become a catalyst for these risks, or at worst, become them itself. We believe that in the Livable Cities initiatives, that the very same principles that we have adopted for building resilient networks are very well in place and that they are very well applicable. And with that, I'll go back to you, Tita.
Thank you, Manny. Now, let's proceed to this part of the webinar, the last part. I'm reminded that we don't have much time, unfortunately. It's all really interesting discussions. Can we get back our resource persons? Please start your video. Geraldine Santos, Ed Travis, Cedric Daep, Veron Gabaldon, and Manny Estrada. And we'd like to ask our chairman, Bill Luz, and our Assure president, Dinky. Okay. In the interest of time, keeping to our schedule, there's some of you have already answered the questions in the chat box, but there are two which we could entertain, and maybe if the panel can just keep their responses short. Elias Fernandez Jr. and Tomasito Villarin want to get your opinions about the creation of a separate department called Department of Disaster Resilience. What are the chances that a proposal will be enacted into law within this year? So anyone among the panelists would like to give their opinion or response? Yes, please.
I think the right venue for the question.
Doc Cedric, yes.
Yeah, I think it will be the right answer for that will be coming from the Congress or the Senate. We are not the right venue to answer the question. Maybe the Senate or the Congress.
Yeah, yes, yeah. But what if you could just share your opinion, if we may ask Veron?
We are monitoring the developments in that aspect, but so far, as Doc Cedric mentioned, we don't have any updates yet. Yeah, right. but we're very much focused on monitoring the development because it actually impacts our work.
Yes, yes. There's another question that has perhaps someone from the government is more, it's a more appropriate, it's the more appropriate person to respond to this. Why is the OCC under the DND? Is disaster response primarily a security issue or a humanitarian response issue?
Okay.
Bill? Yes.
Maybe I can respond, Tita. Actually, it might. I think the reference is to OCD, the Office of Civil Defense. Yeah, OCD. So OCD is part of DND. That's right. Yeah, and so that's its natural fit, by the way. So it just happens that in the Philippine setup, NDRRMC is chaired by the Secretary of National Defense. So and OCD has become sort of the operating arm, secretariat / operating arm, and the director of the OCD is like the executive director, I guess, for the operations. So that's the traditional setup. But actually, in many countries around the world, militaries have been called into humanitarian efforts. It's not unusual. It's happened in many parts of the world. And in fact, if we reflect on the case of Yolanda, among the first responders internationally were the armed forces of a number of other countries, because they happen to have the uh, the logistics, the engineering, the military airlift capacity
Capability.
to do that. The capabilities there. So that is the present setup, and so that's referring really to the Office of Civil Defense (OCD).
I'd like to add a thought also. I think, when you look at the whole issue, there is outside reference made to the fact that the Philippines globally is one of the most at-risk countries for disasters. They've been ranked as high as third in the world. I think the most recent assessment was number 8. So kudos, they've done a good job, but still, it is a very serious issue for the Philippines. And from that perspective, obviously the response needed is a team effort, not just one agency, but many agencies have to respond. And again, it can be a political issue, as noted by one of the respondents in the Q&A. But it is a very serious issue for the Philippines.
Yeah, Tita, let me just say on the World Risk Index, at one time we were second or third. In the latest one, we have, as Ed correctly mentioned, we have dropped. Actually, it's, I believe, 9th. No, and I think what's interesting here is that we still rank high on exposure, but I think the level of preparedness has been getting better. And I like to go back to the example of what Cedric and his team has done in Albay. That's a good example of how, from their years of experience, they have really prepared, and they are much more resilient than they were a decade ago. And that's because they're constantly improving. And I think a lot of people can learn from the work and experience of Cedric.
Mm-hmm. And there's another question by Joel Adriano, and this will be the last in the interest of time. Joel asks, I guess because we're in the period of the pandemic, was expecting that it will be at least touched on, although Veron did. How can cities bounce back and be resilient in the light of the pandemic? Maybe it can be a topic for the next webinar, because can Bill or Dinky respond?
Actually, we've tackled public health and COVID in an earlier lab. I think that was our second lab in this series, and it has to do really with improving the public health system, improving surveillance and contact tracing and testing, all the practices that we're still trying to do across the country. It is important, and because there are other diseases other than COVID that need to be treated, this also requires some form of telemedicine. Because we need to pay attention to other patients as well. But it's worth revisiting. We need to get back to look at the public health space. It's an important one. And in fact, PDRF has just signed up a fairly large grant for a program for 1 year with the New Zealand Embassy on how to address the public health system improvements and capacity building in 15 municipalities and cities across the country, not only for COVID, but for non-COVID diseases as well. So it's an important topic.
Thank you, Bill. And now we've come to the close of this webinar. May I call on Mr. Nathaniel Dinky von Einsiedel, the president of Assure, to give us our closing remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I am Nathaniel von Einsiedel, the president of Assure. And I hope that all the participants have found the topics that we have chosen for today's webinar helpful in your own respective organizations. We suggested this topic to Bill because we have been working in this field of building resiliency among LGUs since Typhoon Yolanda. And as some of the examples that have been mentioned have brought up, particularly in today's presentations, there are two important takeaways that I would like to leave with you as we end this webinar. One is the importance of inter-LGU cooperation and collaboration. As was shown vividly in the presentation of the Binahaan watershed and in the other presentations as well, the impact of climate change, of disaster-induced disasters or weather-induced disasters is that they do not respect political boundaries. Flooding, landslides, as we know very well, do cross these political boundaries. And therefore, the necessity of the LGUs, the example of Binahaan is a watershed, but it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to just a watershed. In the Philippines, we now have the emerging phenomenon of metropolitan areas, where there is a core city and there are surrounding LGUs that comprise a metropolitan area. Whereas several decades ago, it was just Metro Manila that had a formal structure for it, but then the need for coming up with a metropolitan structure is increasing, and therefore the need for interlocal government cooperation and collaboration. The second important thing, which also our speakers had mentioned, is the value of technology, of ICT, of being able to automate data gathering and data analysis, and having the insights derived from that help in the decision making. Whereas in the past, a lot of I remember in the early days when we were doing environmental planning in the Philippines, there was no GIS. But now we do have that. And now we also have ICT. So I think if we were to link the needs for disaster preparedness, and I like the fact that one of our, or couple of our participants pointed out to the pandemic of how we can apply this building of resiliency in the face of COVID-19. I think this is something where it is necessary to create that kind of a balance between the technology that's available there in the market and the need for us to build this resiliency, considering that we are facing more typhoons, stronger typhoons, and all kinds of other disasters, including the pandemic. So with this, I'd like to thank our speakers. And I'd also like to make special mention and give my thanks to Tita for having moderated this webinar very well. I also would like to invite all the participants to answer the feedback form that will appear once you exit from this webinar. For those of you who are on Zoom, the feedback form will appear on your screens once you exit. For those watching on Facebook, please take a picture of the QR code on your screen to receive the feedback form. Your response will help us improve the Liveable Cities Lab series. You may also get a certificate of participation by answering the corresponding question in the survey. Copies of all the presentations will be sent to you via email. We look forward to seeing you at our next Liveable Cities Lab on Wednesday, this coming November 4th. And also please follow us on our social media, facebook.com/liveablecitiesph, and on Twitter and Instagram at livable_ph at livable_ph. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a good evening.
A better future is built by the brave, envisioned by brilliant minds, born from the passions of thousands strong. One that isn't without risk, but protected from it. Safe from all the worries and secure for what's to come. Because a better future with the greatest empires, the strongest communities, and the happiest families will always be worth having. That's why the bold and the fearless understand that recreating something better takes courage and strength. So together, let's start shaping a better future today. Recreate a braver tomorrow.